everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Igniting Hope, Transforming Education Through Neuroscience and Positive Psychology. And so we're really thrilled to have you here with us. My name is Dr. Marion Smith Jr., and I'm the Chief Learning Officer here at Thrively, and I'll be your host for today's session. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to share just a little bit about Thrively and cover a few housekeeping items so we can ensure a smooth and enjoyable webinar experience for everyone. So just a little bit about Thrively. Thrively was founded on a core philosophy that every child has a genius and they deserve to thrive, right? At Thrively, we begin with it's what's strong with you, not what's wrong with you. And our core mission remains to have a paradigm shift in education as we focus on asset-based learning. And so at Thrively, we created the industry's first strengths assessment that really unlocks the positive learning identities and strengths of every learner. We measure hope not as an emotion, but as a cognitive trait with our Hope Index, which helps develop agency and resiliency. And lastly, we ensure emotional security with our Well-Being Index. And so we do this by creating strengths-based, joyful, and hopeful learning environments that impact academic outcomes. So now to why we're all here today. And so we're honored to have Kathleen Beachboard joining us today. And so Kathleen is a teacher, author, and researcher. And after adopting 5 children out of a case of extreme abuse and neglect, she has been on a mission to improve outcomes for those who experience trauma and anxiety. Kathleen has taught middle school English for the past 15 years. She also works as a researcher holding a master's in psychology and is working on a doctorate in positive psychology. Her research focuses on psychological tools schools can use to help students and staff increase psychological hope, resiliency, achievement, and happiness. And with that, Kathleen, the floor is all yours.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here. So you heard my bio about me, but I have to tell you my story in order for you to truly understand why I started this research and where I am today. So before I became a parent, I was a teacher. And so you can see some of my students, they're great kids, woo, and I'm still a teacher. But my life changed when I got a call from the Department of Social Services. I'd gone through foster training with my husband, and they called to let us know they had a family set of 5 and they needed them placed immediately. So I call my husband. I'm like, "Hey, honey, they have 5 kids. It's a family set. They want to place at our house." And he's like, "5? That seems like a lot." And I was like, "No, no, 5, that's like a small group. We've got this." So I convinced them to bring them home, and they showed up with their trash bags full of their belongings. And immediately I tried to do what we know works in education and what works for people, form a good relationship. And so I asked the kids, "What do you like to do? What are you into?" But here's the issue. In that moment, they ran to the corner and they started huddle hugging and crying. And I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't know what to do. I literally stayed up that night and Google searched, "How do you fix broken children?" And to make matters worse, the very next day, I had a professional development on adverse childhood experiences. And the man who was presenting up front said, "Well, if you have one, it can minorly affect you, 2, 3." And so I start counting my kids, and they had 8. And he showed on the screen behind him, if you have an adverse childhood experience and you have 8 or more, you're more likely to go to prison than high school graduation. I was not going to let my kids' past that they went through that was horrible and horrendous to steal their future. That wasn't fair. It wasn't right. Our kids deserve more. And because of that, I ended up doing all of this research and I found something. And that something led me on this path to get a master's degree in psychology, to do everything that I do because I love my kids and I wanted them to be able to choose the future and not just to be able to survive. In school, we try to get these kids just to be okay. That wasn't okay with me. I don't want just okay. I want them to go beyond being able to survive to being able to thrive. And that is why I'm here today to show you what works. And I'm going to tell you, as a mother of 7 children, 5 who are doing phenomenally well despite the adversity they came from. My one daughter, who you can see with the jacket, she actually has cigarette burns on her back in the form of a happy face from her parents. It was horrendous abuse and neglect. But despite what they came from, they are doing amazing things today. And yes, I did use this research on them. And then after the pandemic, I decided I needed to take this into schools everywhere. Why? Well, it's very simple. So in October of 2021, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the Children's Hospital Association, and the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, they declared a national state of emergency due to declines in child and adolescent health. And so here's the thing. This national state of emergency that you see in the bottom from 2021 has not been lifted. It's gotten worse, and more organizations have joined them to say there is a national problem here because our kids are going to the hospital and they're saying, I don't feel good. I feel extreme anxiety. I feel depression. And then when they get there, they're like, oh, you have that kind of emergency? Let me see if there are any beds nearby. Oh, there's not. How about we get you in a telehealth visit? This is typical for all 50 states. I looked up the research right before this webinar. Let's get you on a telehealth visit about 6 to 8 weeks from now, and then we'll try to get something to help you out. That's what's happening in America. We don't have enough people to help with all of this turmoil that's happening. And because of that, we throw teachers on the front line. And guess what? As a teacher, I wasn't trained for this. And here's the biggest thing. We talk about the power of a good relationship, but what if I told you there's something that comes before that? And there is. And that's what I'm going to showcase to you today. And it matters more than for anything because it doesn't impact just our kids. It also impacts all of the educators that are with our kids. So look at this. Educational leaders report deteriorating staff well-being, mental health, and work-life balance as a result of workforce shortages. On top of that, national statistics from the CDC show that 81% of teachers and educators increase their incidence of stress and burnout. Also, 69% had a deterioration in work-life balance. We're working more now than ever before. And 66% of educators indicated that they have low morale or engagement with their job. We're checking out because it's so much right now, we can't deal with all of it. But there is a solution. And this solution has worked in the school that I'm in right now, and it'll work in your school, and it's worked for my kids. What is that solution? That solution is hope. So, hope first is the first emotion you ever learn. This is Erickson's stages of psychosocial development. I know you're thinking teacher college. You did learn about this, but it's kind of breezed by really fast. So, as a baby, you cried. Every person in this webinar, and because you cried, someone picked you up and they took care of you. That moment is the moment that you developed a level of trust in the world and started to develop psychological hope. When you talk about nature nurture, hope is 100% coming from your environment. It is not from your DNA. You learn to have hope. And because you learn to have it, you can also be taught to have more of it. And that's the power of this. Not only that, but hope impacts everything in our life. And I know you're thinking, yeah, you're just saying that because you're this big hopeologist. No, I'm going to prove it to you right now. So, first thing, I want you to take a look at all of these research studies that are just on my screen. Now, to be fair, I am not on the byline of any of these research studies. If you take a look at the titles, Hope uniquely predicts objective academic achievement above intelligence, personality, and previous academic achievement. What? Yes, it's the number one predictor of academic success. Number one. And this research study has been peer reviewed and it's been done multiple times over and over again. On top of that, look at the one on the corner. The magic of hope. Hope mediates the relationship between socioeconomic status and academic achievement, meaning you can come from the poorest of backgrounds, but if you have hope, you will find a way to reach your dreams and to see yourself through. On top of that, the study that got to me was Camp Hope as an intervention for children exposed to domestic violence, a program evaluation of hope and strength of character. So, what does that mean? There is literally a camp. It is run by our government. Our government knows hope works. It's run by the Justice Department. If you have two incarcerated parents, like my own kids, you can send a child there for free. And you know what they do at this summer camp? All summer long. They work on strengths, which Thrively does, and they also measure and raise psychological hope. That's all they do. And they have a 99% success rate that that child who goes to that camp will never become incarcerated. That's powerful. On top of that, hope is a mediator of bullying involvement. It protects our kids and it helps kids with emotional difficulties. On top of that, it looks at an achievement oriented psychosocial profile for African American adolescents. It helps our most marginalized students be able to succeed. That is the power of this, but there's more to it. It can also help us as leaders and educators. If you look at these studies, hope and well being, your well being is protected and indicative of your hope level. On top of that, hope, a new positive strength for human resource development. It is one thing that we know will help retain staff. Yes. And we're in a teacher shortage right now. Hope mediates the relationship between income and subjective well being, meaning you might not have a lot of money, but if you have a lot of hope, you will feel good. You will have a purpose and you will feel satisfied with your life. And hope as a source of resilience in later adulthood, not only does it see us through on our jobs and what we're doing, but it helps us throughout our lives and our overall health and our well being throughout our existence. So, if it's so amazing and it helps with stress, well being, turnover, and everything else, why aren't we utilizing it in schools? That's a good question. Now, first, I know I showed you these studies really quick, but I want you to have them. On this screen right here, I believe that anytime someone shows something to an educator, every person in this webinar, you bring strengths, you bring your own point of view, and you bring your own intelligence. I want you to see the research. So I'm giving it to you. If you click on the Here button, you can open this on a separate tab. And what will happen is you're going to see three folders. The first folder is about how hope impacts kids. You're going to see a second folder about how hope impacts adults. And then you're going to see a third folder that's just about hope in general with leadership. So when you click on this folder, what happens? I've provided over 79 research studies for you to go through. Not today, not right now. This is a very short webinar, but I wanted you to have the research so you can go through it on your own because you won't even believe me in the power of what hope does. It is that powerful. But you can have these research studies so you can go through it. Or you could just quickly get on Google and type in hope and education. Right now, if you do that on Google Scholar, you'll see there's over 4,957 research studies that are actively in progress or currently being published on psychological hope and its power inside of a school. So now that you know this and you know that hope does amazing things for kids, it helps them. What else does it do? Here's where I'm going to get geeked out and excited. First, hope is not just having an impact on your overall life and well being, it also changes your brain. And so, psychological hope is also a neuroscience. Let me show you the latest research. This first one has been utilized and done a few times. In this study right now, you can see that this is an fMRI brain scan and it's of a high school student's brain. So this study, essentially, these kids were put in fMRI brain scanners, but before that, we measured their hope level. And what we found is while in the brain scanner, we attempted to scare them. Why? To see what kind of impact hope would have on their brain. So essentially, when they're in these brain scanners, we expected them to go into an amygdala response. For the counselors in here, you're like, yeah, amygdala response. That's your fight, flight, fawn, freeze, and flop response. A lot of F words, not the bad one. So, but what's amazing is every single person who had high hope, their brain reacted differently. So, what it did was instead of being reactionary, and we knew they were stressed because cortisol was pumping through their body, and we measured that. You'll see this little blue dot. What's amazing is that is not the amygdala. The high hope brains were able to think and process during this experiment. That's the medial orbital frontal cortex. So instead of being reactionary or reacting, these kids are thinking. And it's not just any kid, it's every kid who has high hope. High hope is built into the human brain. What about medium hope? No. What about low hope? No. But you can learn to raise your hope within 90 minutes of an intervention. And over the course of a year, you can raise it almost 1 to 2 levels. And that's enough to make a difference in a person's brain. But for the counselors in here, this is the super exciting study. So, hope actually increases gray matter in the brain. We are literally, by measuring and raising hope, doing neuroscience on the brain. And this is a very recent study. So, you'll see it's from 2020. So, essentially, your SMA region of your brain, which is very close to the prefrontal cortex, it actually increases gray matter. And we found this strong correlation that's not just randomized, it has been shown over and over again. People who have higher hope have more gray matter in their brain. So, for all those people who know that adverse childhood experiences, trauma, anxiety, depression, they can decrease gray matter in the brain. This is well known in the world of psychology. Well, guess what? Hope can increase it and change the brain for the better. So, we're literally doing neurosurgery on our kids by raising their hope level, changing their brains for the better, not just for today, but for their entire life. And that is amazing. So, now that I've got your attention, because you can literally grow a child's brain by increasing their hope, what can we do about it? Well, we can start measuring and raising hope. But let's start with us. You can't teach what you don't know. So, right now, this is where I want you to get out your phone. I know I'm not even watching you. And I want you to scan this QR code, or feel free, if you're on the same presentation, to go to thrively.com/school of hope. In order to do this work, you need to be able to measure your own hope. And what is hope? You're going to find out as you take the assessment. So I'm going to be quiet and give everyone a couple minutes to take the hope assessment right now on your computer or on your phone so you can see where your hope is. In order to help others, you have to be at high hope. So the first thing you need to do is look at yourself, see where your hope is, and then the tools I'm giving you today can increase your hope and the hope of your students. It's a 2-for-1. So I'm going to be quiet because I know some of you are taking it. I'm distracting you. And I'll give you a whole minute because it doesn't take that long to take. You might be wondering, well, am I at high hope? Am I at low hope? Well, most people are at medium to low hope. Why? Because our society teaches us to have medium hope. And so, because of that, right now, when you get your assessment, you're going to find out whether you're high, medium, or low. The typical person is medium hope. And again, that's just because it's society. We learn it from each other. And because we learn it from each other, most of us have medium hope. When I first measured my own hope, when I was measuring my kids, I was at medium hope. And that's another reason that I tended to burn out from the secondary trauma trauma that I would get from them more often because hope protects our well being. It's like a dam. So the higher your hope, the more you can go through. You can go through trauma, anxiety, stress. And because my hope is higher, I can go through more and my well being is protected. So that's one of the reasons hope is pivotal and critical in a life. For those of you wondering, well, what kind of what hope do I have overall? Well, hope in general is measured by three things. And what it's measured by is your goals. That's your what power, agency, that's your willpower, and pathways, that's your way power. Goals, pathways, and agency combine together to form what is psychological hope. Now, when you took the hope assessment, before you get mad at me, you'll say, where's my goal score? Well, there is no goal score. And the reason why is people are naturally goal directed. Like before you took this webinar, you said, well, it's a webinar. So if I don't like it, I'll click off of it and then I might go get a cup of coffee or I could do this. And so because you're naturally goal directed, we can't measure your goals, but hope does impact the type of goals you set for yourself. And so people who are low in hope will set easier, more achievable goals. People who are higher in hope will set more hard to reach goals and they will set more of them. So when one goal isn't working, they'll move to another. And so that's why when you look at the success of a person's life, hope dictates their success because hopeful people will try harder, more difficult tasks, and people with lower hope are going to try easier things or they're not going to try them at all because they believe they can't, so they won't. So here's the most amazing thing. Before I get into the tools that I'm going to give you today, Dr. Snyder, he's the founder of Hope Theory. He actually went on Good Morning America to do a live science experiment with the host of Good Morning America. He took the host, the weatherman, and the medical expert into a small room. That hope assessment you guys just took, he gave it to them, and he came out with a small slip of paper. He told all three men they would be participating in the cold presser task. Now, I know that sounds fancy, but it just means stick your hand in icy water till it hurts so bad you have to take it out. So all three men stuck their hand in the icy water. After a few minutes, though, the weatherman couldn't stand it. He pulled his hand out. Then the medical expert, he couldn't stand it. He pulled his hand out. The host of Good Morning America was about to pull his hand out when the cameraman said, we have to go to commercial break because it's live TV. So he said, I'm going to leave my hand in here till the end of the break. And he did. At the end of the break, he pulled his hand out and he went over to Dr. Snyder and he said, what does hope have to do with icy water and my winning? To which Dr. Snyder revealed to the audience at home, the reason I sat down and wasn't even watching your experiment is because hope accurately predicted you would come in first, he would come in second, and he would come in third. What? How? He said, I'm a scientist, and hope doesn't take away the trials we will face. You will go through things, death, divorce, darkness. However, what hope does do for a person in their life, it is allows them to access the deep reserve of their human potential to keep going despite the obstacles you will face. That's what hope does. And it didn't really get into public education. So now that you know that story and you understand the concept of hope, let's get into actionable strategies that we can utilize to raise hope. So the first thing is, no matter your hope level, hope can be strengthened with an intervention. You just found out your own individual hope level. There is also group hope, which is when you spread hope in the environments that you're in. And there's also cultural hope. And that's something we are working on here at Thrively as well. And that's when you look at the systems that feed hope. You can't take it by yourself. This one has to be done with leadership teams. So what are some actionable strategies to raise hope? Well, the first one is actually the easiest one. Hope is contagious because we learn it from our environments. So one of the first things that you can do is you can find a mentor for yourself who is someone who is more hopeful. Think about those people who exude energy. Just like me right now, I have this much energy and it's almost like 8 o'clock at night here on the East Coast. It's crazy. So The thing is, energy comes from our hope level. And so, looking at that, we get hope from being mentored by others. In a classroom, you ready for this? Or in a school, counselors, you can find your hopeful people, make them buddies with kids who are low in hope. In a classroom, take your seating chart, those of you who are in here, and do this one thing. Find out who the hopeful kids are because it's built in their brain, and plant them and put around them the hopeless kids, the kids who are low in hope. Over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, the low hope kids will have their scores raised by that high hope kid. And here's the reason why. We tend to hang around people similar to ourselves, similar incomes. Think about your best friend, similar beliefs. Yep, similar hope levels. So if you want to raise your level, you need to have people who are at a higher level around you, and they will teach you to have higher hope. That's pretty easy. And if you do that, you do a seating chart or you do buddies, measure the attendance and the grades of the people you do this to, and you're going to see the attendance goes up, the grades go up. I've done this in a classroom for now over 17 years, and it works every time. All right, so that's an easy one. So what are some other actionable strategies? First, even though I won't have time to present every strategy I've created, I'm going to give them all to you for free. All you have to do is click here on this big expanded map, and it'll actually take you to an outside presentation where it's going to give you in your Google Docs examples of every single tool that I'm going to present today and more. So let's get into the nitty gritty of goals. So I told you, hope impacts the goals that you have for yourself. So the quickest way to raise overall hope is to work on a person's goals because it'll raise their agency and it'll raise their pathways at the same time. It's like a 2-for-1 punch. So we should set smart goals. No, that's not what I'm talking about here. It's about teaching kids to set goals and how to achieve them. So the first thing is you have to know a person's goals in order to set their goals. So the first thing that you need to teach people is that multitasking when you're trying to reach a goal, like I'm going to do this and this at the same time, that's actually one of the worst things you can do for yourself. This is a video, but for the sake of time, I have it in the presentation so you can watch that you cannot multitask. So if you're trying to write and talk at the same time and do two separate things, you can't do it successfully. So one of the first things we can teach people is when you set a goal, you have to provide focus on that goal. And one of the ways to do that is to distractions and prioritize a chunk of time for that goal. Make it a hopeful habit. Like Michael Jordan, when he did not make his high school basketball team, he spent over 30 minutes every day just shooting free shots every single day after school. Why? Because he made a hopeful habit that would help him reach his goal, and it worked. Hopeful habits are the key to success. But multitasking, trying to do basketball and listen to music, and also it's going to distract you and take you away from the focus for your goal. All right, what's another thing we can do? Look at your joy and your hope and your happiness during the day. A lot of people prioritize things, they don't prioritize themselves. So, one of the easiest things you can do with yourself or with students or kids is make a joy list. Write down the things that make you happy and schedule them into your day, because our goals shouldn't just encompass what we want to be when we get older. They need to prioritize self-care as well. And so by making a joy list, you could say, hey, for me, this morning, every day, I have a cup of coffee like this, and I listen to 80s music walking down the hallway. And I do that every day, and the high schoolers go, oh my gosh, she's doing it again. But it makes me happy, and it energizes me for the day. So prioritizing joy during your day and scheduling it into your day sets a positive goal for your day and a goal that'll energize you and make you happy. So these are incremental goals, not just necessarily long-term big goals, little goals like do the things you love every day. What else can we do to increase goals in a person? Well, we have a couple of playlists here on Thrively that I have built that you can utilize. One is hopeful practices for grades 3 through 5. Another one is 6 through 12. And when you're working on a person's goals, you can also have them make some sort of visual interpretation of their goals that they can utilize to motivate them. All right, so I know that was a lot for goals. We're going straight into agency. So, agency is your willpower. Most people think of willpower as something you should use every day, like a muscle. That's not what willpower is. Willpower is like the emergency brake of your car. You don't use your emergency brake to drive, do you? I really hope no one in the chat is saying yes right now. So, if you don't do that, it is a last resort. But we know there are things that extend our agency and extend our willpower. So, what are those things? All right, here's the first one. And this one's a good one. I know you have your cell phone nearby, so grab it. I want you to try this and see the power of it. Find someone on your contact list who you're grateful for. And I want you to send them a quick message of gratitude. Say, hey, I'm in this weird webinar with this hopeologist, and I just wanted to say I'm thankful for you. I'm going to do it too right now. So do this, and I want you to see what happens for the person and what happens for you when you see the reaction of the person, because they will respond, because gratitude is reciprocal. So, gratitude, it is not a byproduct that we should utilize at the end of the day. Gratitude is a foundational component of our lives that extends our agency and it extends our willpower. So, how could you use that to raise your own hope? At the end of the day, one of the things I do is I write 3 emails. At the beginning of the day, I pull up 3. I write thank you in the subject line. By the end of the day, before I shut down my computer, I fill out those 3 emails. Other things you could do in a classroom, keep a gratitude jar and have kids write what they're grateful for. At the end of the week, pull some of them out and read them. Or something really simple is just have a gratitude journal for yourself and think at the end of the day before you go home and you're saying, I had a bad day. What is it that you're grateful for that happened that day? It'll change your mindset and it'll change your life. What else can we do for agency? Well, creating interruption free zones. Once again, in order to enter flow, which is well established, you have to have a physical space and time where you can focus and pay attention to your goals. So create a space and time for yourself and show your students how to do that. If they're going to work on something and they want to do really well on it, have them schedule it in a time for no interruptions, even on their phone. I have my kids use Forest. It's an app that grows trees and actually donates to the Amazon rainforest. I have a whole forest of trees and it makes your phone a brick. So you can focus and gain more agency, because when you get interrupted, think about it, it makes it harder to get started again. Another great motivator, going back to goals, this is one that combines goals with agency, is creating a vision board. A vision board of the person you want to be motivates you. It also motivates your students. Every kid deserves a spot on your wall in your classroom. So in my classroom, when the kids come through the door, they see their vision boards. All 76 kids have a vision of the person they want to be, not what they want to be, not their job. Like they want to be known as kind. They want to have a family. They want to travel. They want to graduate. You can see that from this vision board. They have things they want to do, but seeing their dreams as they come through the door is a big motivator because it reminds them of where they want to go and how school will help them to get there. It doesn't show school's trying to cram stuff in you. We're trying to help you become who you want to be. Also, refrigerator doors, they're great things. So I'm not talking about a real one. I just have a space in my classroom where I have every kid's name, and it's a space for them to showcase things they're proud of. They have to show it to me first, and then they pin it to the wall. And these are high schoolers, seniors, juniors, and they love it because it allows them to brag on themselves, which is something people who are low in hope don't do. They don't take ownership of their success. They think it's just luck. And that's a problem. We want kids to own their success and realize they are truly valuable. So that's agency. There's also some playlists for agency built into Thrively. So the last one that we're going to focus in on is pathways. Pathways is your ability to form a path to your goals. So there are a couple of things that work for pathways. The first one is having kids think about their problems differently. So this little paper right here, you can make copies of it. I told you this whole presentation is clickable. When a kid has a problem, generally, especially if they're low or medium in hope, they think about the problem and then they say, crap, I can't think of a solution. Or they're trying to think of one solution for their problem because school teaches convergent thinking. 1 + 1 is 2. There's always one answer to the problem. But we know from being in the real world, that's not the case. Our problems in the real world, they have no answers. And so it's important to develop lots of solutions, which is divergent thinking, in order to solve our problems. So here's how this works. So I had a student and she said, I'm never going to memorize the Pythagorean theorem. When did math get letters? A squared B LMNOP. And so I gave her this sheet. So she vented. And it's good to vent because counselors will tell you it's cathartic to be able to say, I'm having a problem. Here's how it's affecting me. So she said, I will never memorize math. I can't get these letters. This is crazy. I don't know why math is like English now. Then, after she was done venting, the next question is what's the solution? It's what are your strengths? What are the things that you are personally good at? And so she was like, well, I don't know what I'm good at. Oh, I'm really good at TikTok. I'm good at dancing. I'm good at singing. I'm good at grammar. You told me that. Then the last question throws them off. How can you use your strengths, the things you're naturally good at, your talents, for your problem? Hopeful people realize not everyone is good at everything, but everyone is good at something. And so they take stock of what they're good at, and then they create pathways to solve their problems. So for that girl, she was like, TikTok, how can I use TikTok for the Pythagorean theorem? Oh my gosh. So she got on TikTok. She's like, did you know there's a thing called teachers of TikTok? It's crazy. Oh my gosh, I could learn it on here. And then she came back the next day and she said, oh my gosh, Miss Beachwood, look, I got an A on my math test. And I said, wow, that's great. She's like, yeah. And I made a new TikTok dance. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I did it. And I was like, yes, you did it. Then she utilized this the next time she had a problem and she didn't come to me. I gave her a tool that taught her pathway thinking. So another thing you can utilize for pathway thinking is creating a personal energy map. People who are hopeful realize there are certain times of the day that they should do certain things. Every single person has their own personal chronological clock. And so you might be an early bird. We call those larks. You might be a night owl, which is a person who gets more done at night. It's important to create a personal energy map. This document right here will help you map your own personal energy for a couple of days to determine what are those time frames that you get the most done. Then you schedule certain things that are easier or harder based off of when you get the most done. And it's the simplest thing, but it's a hopeful habit that hopeful people do naturally. I get the most done paperwork wise in the morning. So I do all my paperwork in the morning. And at nighttime, I'm more sociable. Look, I'm in a webinar right now. This is perfect for my energy flow. And that's why I have so much extra energy. And it creates better pathways. So, one, they think about pathways differently. Two, they look at when their energy is at their peak. And on top of that, on Thrively, we have specific playlists for kids who are low in pathways to increase their pathways that we have built to improve them. So now that I've given you some actionable strategies, I really tried to fit an entire book into this whole presentation. What is one thing that you will do tomorrow to increase your hope or the hope of your students? I want you to put this in the chat. Come on, let's go. Let's get a conversation going. Or maybe this sparked an idea. There are so many things now that you know what hope is that you could do. So the smartest person in this room isn't me. It's the room. You came with ideas, strengths, and talents. Now that you know what these three facets are, how can you utilize it to help hope? I wrote a beautiful book called The School of Hope. I have a second book that's coming out next year from Corwin Press as well. And that one is on the hopeful brain. You guys will love it. If you have questions, thoughts, ideas, feel free to reach out to me. I also work with Thrively all the time. I built playlists and materials for them. You guys are awesome. And yeah, the Rainforest app, it's called Forest, Forest. Feel free to check it out. And if you have other things, remember, I gave you lots of tools. Thank you for being amazing. I hope this was awesome. And I'm using it not in the correct hope turn, but I love you guys. And remember, there are things built into Thrively. And if you're interested in learning more about those, you can contact
You,
Thrively. You
Kathleen, two questions just based on our time. You talked about the science behind seating assignments. And one of the questions was like, what happens to the students with high hope when they are surrounded by those with little to no hope? So can you talk a little bit about like the
Yes.
positive impacts
So
around?
a lot of people will assume that the low hope kids will bring them down. But the reality is, just like the guy on Good Morning America who went through the cold presser task, did it hurt him? No, it impacted him, but it didn't hurt his overall hope. Just like the low hope students, for a couple of days, might they lower the hope of the kid who's high in hope? No, because it's built in their brain. Will they feel a little down at first? Yes, but you will see research wise that what's going to happen is that high hope kid, they're so full of hope, they're going to raise the other kids, and it'll happen very subtly. Like I had a student who is a senior, and they're like, "Hey, I've got to go to a college visit," and they're surrounded by low hope kids. One kid said, "Wait, you have to go visit the colleges?" And this is the low hope kid. The high hope kid said, "Yeah, we're going to end up living there. So, yeah, you've got to visit it. Do you need help with that? Have you taken the SAT yet?" And the other kid says, "No, am I supposed to?" Because those high hope kids have pathways to their dreams, they're going to teach the others how to access those pathways. And eventually, that high hope kid said, "Hey, do you want to come with me on my college tour?" And he was like, "Yeah, man." They became friends. Proximity makes us feel sociable with each other. And because of that, they're more likely to develop friendships with that high hope kid. And that high hope kid is going to raise the rest of them.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that. And one final question. Can you talk a little bit about, what role you think or how can K through 12 educators advocate for the importance of hope in educational policy or school culture, just based on your research and just based on your own professional practice?
So, the biggest thing is if you want to advocate for hope in your school, in your state, wherever you are, first, remember I gave you that research folder. Look at what science is telling us about what hope does in the school systems. It helps our most marginalized kids and our kids who've had the most difficult backgrounds to be able to succeed. Essentially, when you go through things, trauma, stress, anxiety, marginalization due to outside forces, cultural forces, it lowers your overall well being. However, here's the thing hope does hope allows us to tip the scale so those things will not dictate our future. So if you want to do something, first, look at the research, show it to others, do hope in your own classroom. Spread the word about what it does. When you even change your seating chart, like I said, track the attendance, track the grades. You'll see an impact in 6 to 8 weeks. When you see it work for you, spread the word. That's what I'm doing every day. So the first thing is tell people it works, show them it works. Even my own school, if you look at the data, we were under academic review when I moved to this school, and in 1 year, we got out of it. And we're all green this year. Beautiful in the state of Virginia. It works. It helps schools academically. It helps us socially. It helps us behaviorally. You're going to see your behaviors go down as hope goes up. Why? Because here's the thing. In education, and this is what you tell your policymakers, we want to do this new fad, this new thing, this new thing. Well, you cannot build a house on a foundation made of sand. And if the foundation of a person is hope, and you try to add all these things, it'll work temporarily, but it's going to crumble. And when it crumbles, guess what? We have to keep working. And so if we fix the foundation of a person, you saw it's the first thing we ever learned. If we fix that, we can build up and we can build more strong, solid people because we're fixing their hope and we're saving their lives.
No, absolutely powerful. One statement in the comments was around like be hope and do hope, right? Like embody just what does that look like and make that a part of just who you are each and every day. And so I hope everyone is excited, re-energized about what you've heard today. And so on behalf of Thrively, on behalf of Kathleen Beachboard, we want to thank you for joining our session today. We hope that you found it insightful, and then we also like to say we hope that it challenged your thinking or invited you to think differently about how you approach your work in the classroom. So if you are interested in learning more about Hope, about asset based learning, about strengths based education, we'll send the information to you for those that are here. We have some links as well, but you may also visit us at thrively.com/classroom for additional resources. And you can also follow us on social media at Thrively on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And so, once again, on behalf of Thrively, on behalf of Kathleen Beachboard, thank you for your time today. And until next time, let's continue to humanize learning together, filled with hope.